FNAF is one of the most confusing and utterly challenging things to try to understand to a person who's never played FNAF. My job for this video is to try to help you, the viewer, understand FNAF and maybe see a little bit of the history in it. I'm only going to go as far back as to do Fredbear's Family Diner up until Ultimate Custom Night because I cannot be bothered to mess with any of the other games. Damn! Especially with the release of Secret of the Mimic, which somehow retcons everything and rewrites the entire story of FNAF again. So without further ado, let's jump right into the video. Fredbear's Family Diner takes place in the 1970s, founded by Henry, Emily, and William Afton, which we're going to get into one of these guys very soon, and the other is going to come into play later on in the story, but we'll get to that whenever we do. Basically, William is the money guy. He handles all the business operation, while Henry Emily is the guy that has basically made the animatronics and is, I would say, the more production-wise witty guy. Basically, Henry is the hands-on guy while William is the book-smart guy. So all in all, they kind of come together to make one big old team for the Fazbear Entertainment Enterprise. Along the way, they make two animatronics, one of which is named Fredbear. It's a giant golden bear.
Gasp! I never would have guessed.
And the other is Spring Bonnie, which is a giant golden bunny.
Gasp!
One of these animatronics is going to come into play very soon. Basically, William has three kids. They're going to be very important. Elizabeth Afton, Michael Afton, and Crying Child, which some people think is Evan Afton, but I'm just going to call him Crying Child for the sake of calling him Crying Child. Basically, in the 1970s, Michael is about a teenager and he's hanging out with his friends at Fredbear's because, well, I mean, his dad is a co-owner and kind of runs it, so he can kind of do whatever the hell he wants. Henry has a daughter named Charlotte Emily, and the reason why she is going to be important is for one very big thing. Charlotte Emily is one of the first victims of William Afton. Now, the reason why I said William Afton is very important is because he is called the Purple Guy, which is it's a lot to take in, but just pay attention. Basically, some kids lock out Charlotte and Emily because everyone resents Crying Child and Emily. One night, William is drunk. He goes to a bar and they tell him that he can't go anymore and he has to go home. And instead, he goes to the restaurant, finds Charlotte locked outside, and she becomes his first victim, taking over the puppet role because the puppet was made for Charlotte by Henry for her and her protection. So boom, William has now his first victim and the person who is going to matter the most in the timeline and throughout this entire history. By the way, the puppet is the sole reason why all of the children that William has in the near future unalived, she is the sole reason why they all come to life as a whole. Henry is obviously devastated because he lost his only child, which was his daughter. So you can kind of imagine how this takes a toll on Henry. And Henry, I feel like, knows this entire time that it was William. He just didn't want to act on it because he didn't want to make the business himself or William look bad. So we're going to go a little bit forward. I believe this is like the day after or a couple days after Charlotte's murder. Somehow Fredbear's is still open. And during the Crying Child's birthday, and this is going to be very important, Michael is picking on his brother, which is the Crying Child. Mind you, Michael and Evan, which is the Crying Child, are both kids of William Afton. Michael decides on his brother's birthday to take him and all of his friends and stick Evan's head in Fredbear's mouth. And after, you know, obviously this child's mouth is in a robot designed to move its mouth, it crushes Evan's frontal lobe.
Was that the bite of 87?
Yeah, maybe that wasn't a good idea. So boom, there you go. Now you have two dead children, and now you have a psychopath who has even more of a drive to want to unalive children. So now William, after a little bit, has this undeniably deep hatred for Michael. He has this, just this like he hates Michael.
You know, I mean, that's why I didn't love him in the first place. He was always a terrible kid, not worth my time. But now I hate him more than I ever have.
Five Nights at Freddy's 4 basically takes us into the perspective of the Crying Child in his bedroom, and this game was much different from the other ones because in FNAF 1 through 3 you were usually in an office, unlike this game where you are now in a bedroom. So it was a little bit of a different take on the animatronics themselves. This is a different timeline, and apparently Five Nights at Freddy's 4 takes place in 1983, which I'm pretty sure makes the most amount of sense, which is around the time that I think William was making his own animatronics. It's a lot to take in. I'm still trying to understand it myself. Now you have all of the FNAF 1 animatronics, and they look nothing like they did in the first game. They are called Nightmares. And basically, they invade, well, the crying child's room. Basically, you know, you got Chica, you got Bonnie, you got Foxy, you got Freddy. They all come from different areas. Bonnie from the left door, Chica from the right, Foxy from the closet, because, you know, he's a little shy boy. And then we have Freddy, who hides under your blanket and tries to jump scare you whenever you're trying to take a little nappy nap. Oh yeah, and also Chica can just send the cupcake. Yeah, that's a thing.
Look, next. Oh my god.
And boom, now we go on to FNAF's sister location. FNAF's sister location somehow takes place in between the timeline of FNAF 4 and Fredbear's. Supposedly, FNAF's sister location was made in between Fredbear's Family Diner and Five Nights at Freddy's 4 by William Afton, which is the reason why he made the quote-unquote Funtime animatronics. He made an animatronic specifically for his daughter, which we did talk about earlier. Her name is Elizabeth Afton. Very important, and we're going to need to know her name. Basically, he makes this animatronic named Circus Baby, and you go in and you're the security guard, which I'm pretty sure you are William Afton. I'm really not sure, but you also could be something else. So I believe you play as Michael Afton, which is so weird, but I don't know. You're still purple and you're wearing a purple shirt and shit, so I don't know. Throughout this time, William has been making animatronics on the low underneath his house. Yeah, this time, yeah, I told you this game is confusing. You're gonna have to sit with me on this one. And after all this, the main thing that you're gonna have to pay attention to is one thing. William is a bad guy. Henry is a good guy. The children are innocent, but coming after you for some reason. Now you have sister location, which takes place, basically you have to go in and fix stuff, and two electricians eventually throughout the entire game end up getting self deleted by the animatronics. How did they know how to tie a knot? Who taught them arts and crafts? So later on throughout the story, basically after you complete sister location, Ennard, if you do the just regular ending, Ennard, which is this scrap animatronic made up of all of the animatronics, including Ballora, Funtime Freddy, Funtime Foxy, and Circus Baby, and actually mimic Circus Baby's voice to actually get you to listen to them. It's a whole thing. Yeah, I know. It's very hard to understand. Ennard basically takes up the entirety of the game and ends up mimicking Circus Baby's voice to try to help you. We're going to use help very, very lightly here. He basically helps you into your doom. Now, you can get the secret ending, which does have you go in a whole different direction during the last night, and you can actually go into an office, and if you enter a code, you will actually see security cameras of the crying child's room. It's so weird. It's so weird. But after all this, now you have to complete the night avoiding Ennard, and eventually whenever you beat the night, you will get this ending where Ennard will just enter your house while you're just calmly eating popcorn. Yeah, it's weird. But if you get the regular ending, you will end up going into the scooper room, which is where all the other animatronics were that Ennard had them in to scoop out their animatronic souls, I guess. Remnant is another thing that comes into play in this, and apparently Remnant is the one thing that can keep the children alive forever, which is why they're stuck in the animatronics. It's really weird. Oh yeah, also Circus Baby ends up unaliving Elizabeth Afton. I forgot to mention that if I didn't already. But yeah, there's a mini game where you play a Circus Baby and you have to bring an ice cream to a child, which ends up being William's child, which is his daughter Elizabeth Afton. And as she's going to grab the ice cream, yeah, she just takes her and just sends her off her way. Yeah, it's brutal. So after all of this, are you understanding some of it? No? Okay, good. You're not going to. So after all of this, the true ending basically has you, the player, which I believe is Michael Afton, gets scooped by Ennard. Ennard enters your body and uses you as a suit. Very, very graphic. And he just walks around, and eventually your body will rot because, well, it's a body. It's gonna rot when there's no living things in there. Ennard tries to be a normal human being walking around in Michael's body, but yeah, it doesn't fully work out. Eventually, Ennard just spits himself out of Michael's body, and Michael somehow lives through it all after his skin turns purple. And no, this doesn't make Michael the purple guy, but somehow William is still the purple guy because he wore a purple shirt. It's all very confusing. Now that we are into the FNAF 4 and Fredbear territory, we can move on to the next game.
I hope you die in the fire!
Now we're moving on to 1987, which is Five Nights at Freddy's 2. This is where the puppet and the toy animatronics and the withered animatronics all come into place. And this, I believe, is the game that has somewhat of the most animatronics, maybe apart from the 6th game and Ultimate Custom Night, obviously, because Ultimate Custom Night has fucking everything. And you are playing as a guy named Jeremy Fitzgerald. Now, many people like to speculate that Michael is the one that is in FNAF 2 later on because of reasons. It's really confusing. But you are playing as Jeremy Fitzgerald in the first part throughout almost the entire playthrough of FNAF 2. Jeremy is basically the guy that is put on night shift and you have to watch the animatronics. And later on down the line, when you get to about the 6th night, they don't have you playing as Jeremy Fitzgerald anymore. Now you're actually playing as someone else. You're playing as, I believe it's Mike Schmidt. Basically, during all this time, Jeremy is the night guard from nights 1 through 6. And I believe somewhere along the line, whenever he finally gets a day shift offer, he ends up getting his head bitten by a mangle. This game has a weird thing with getting their heads bit off. Phone Guy, which is a reoccurring character in most of the games, at least throughout most of them, tries to tell us something throughout this and basically says that you're not supposed to be there on night 6, like, at all.
Hello. What on earth are you doing there? Didn't you get the memo? The place is closed down, at least for a while.
But night 7, which is the custom night, is believed to be Jeremy's day shift, which ultimately does lead to his deletion. And yeah, you can kind of imagine how that goes. So now we have FNAF 2, the withered animatronics. You have all these other things, and I believe the withered eventually gets used into FNAF 1, which is very odd, but we're gonna get into that. All right, now we're starting at the very beginning, where it all started. FNAF 1. Yes, are we finally here? Are we here now? Oh my gosh, we can finally start from FNAF 1, which makes the most sense and sets the stage for everything somehow.
The animatronic characters here do get a bit quirky at night.
FNAF 1 takes place in 1993 and starts at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. What do you know? It is ran by William Afton. What do you know? The guy, throughout this entire time, since FNAF 2 and Fredbear's and all this, has accumulated a high body count, somewhere in, the 4 to 5 range, I believe, or probably even more during this time. Because, obviously, the children are taking over these animatronics and possessing them, and they think that you are the purple guy. They think you're William. Oh, but you're not. You're... Somehow, throughout this whole thing, you're Michael. It's very, very odd. Mike Schmidt is the main character in FNAF 1, and somehow you are Mike Afton. Yeah, I know, it's very confusing once again. So in FNAF 1, you know the deal. You check the lights, you check the doors, you have power, whereas in the other games, you don't really get power. That doesn't really come back anymore for some reason, which is so odd to me. It only really comes back, I believe, in Ultimate Custom Night, which is so odd to me. One of the main things that I will say about this game is FNAF 1 sets the stage for just opening up a whole can of worms that I don't think Scott Cawthon was ready for later on down the line. Children are going missing. You still have reports. Golden Freddy is somehow possessed by the crying child and another child at the same time. There's 2 children in one animatronic suit, and somehow one of them's Cassie, and he hates William, but the crying child loves his dad and kind of doesn't cope with that, and he's just a bitch. He's just a bitch. The crying child, basically, I would say, is kind of the middle ground for a person that wants to see himself just leave and go and Cassidy wants to stay and watch William suffer. Cassidy, I believe, was William's most brutal deletion. It is brutal. He did Cassidy dirty. So no wonder Cassidy is the most vengeful spirit of every single one. And it's also said that Scott Cawthon had very, very bad nightmares about Bonnie, which is odd because Bonnie's also the one that put up the most fight against William. So that man was throwing haymakers. FNAF 1 really isn't like a whole lot of storyline. It's just a main setting stone for what the start of Five Nights at Freddy's is, and it kind of takes you to the standard of what you're going to expect from this timeline. It does tell you about all of the things that you do need to know, and FNAF 1 you don't really have to look too much into if you've already heard everything else that I've just said. It's only going to make sense if you just start from FNAF 1, so it's a lot. Now we're going into FNAF 3, one of the most dog shit games throughout the entire series. In my opinion, it's the worst, but it's also one of the easiest, so I can't complain.
Have at thee! Ah, my fucking knees!
FNAF 3 takes place in 2023 and is the sole reason why 30... Who is texting me? 30 years later after FNAF 1 and after all the shit goes down, during FNAF 1, what I did not mention that they do mention in FNAF 3 is basically throughout the minigames, it kind of gives you a history of what William Afton was doing. Throughout the minigames, you play as the animatronics as getting led by a purple bear, which says, "Follow me." You get led into a room, it leads to an error, and William Afton comes out and destroys the animatronic, which ends up freeing the spirits. Now, if you complete every single night and you free up the spirits, you will be the last crying spirit, and you will actually see William Afton in the spare room where he is fearing for his life from all of these dead children because, well, I mean, he kind of did them dirty. Basically, they all corner him into one room with one of the spirits leading the charge, which I believe is actually Cassidy. And, of course, William is running from this animatronic and ends up getting into an Old Spring Bonnie costume, which he laughs utterly because apparently he knows how to put it on properly and knows how not to mess anything up in it. Well, what they don't tell you about these suits is these are spring lock suits, and if you get them wet or even breathe on them too hard, which is so odd for a suit that's made for you to get inside, that's very odd. I gotta hold my breath for 30 minutes so I can appease to these children. Basically, they get wet, he breathes a little too hard because he's laughing his ass off, and he ends up getting spring locked and getting all of his bones crushed, and his organs just fall out of him, and his jaw is just opened up shut, and he screams for his life. And yeah, it's a lot to take in. So basically, boom, William is now trapped in his own animatronic suit, and yeah, so now he's been sitting in a room for 30 years, rotting away, and because he's been rotting away, some guys decide, hey, we're gonna buy this place and we're just gonna open up a Fazbear fright attraction. We're gonna make it scary. Once again, one of the things that I've been talking about throughout this entire thing was that you are playing as Michael Afton throughout a good chunk of these games, and it stands very true and still stands true from FNAF 1 to now. The reason why I say that is because you are playing as Michael in the FNAF 3 game. Supposedly the whole reason why all of the animatronics have been attacking you this entire time is because Michael looks the most like William. Yes, this makes the most sense because supposedly these two look identical, and it's also very hard whenever you have purple skin. Play throughout all the minigames, you know the history. After night 1, they end up unveiling this door that ends up getting locked, and they actually find William inside, but they don't know it's him, they just see an animatronic.
But I have an even better surprise for you. You're not gonna believe this. We found one. A real one.
So boom, they end up freeing William, and now William is free to go. He is out and about. He's dancing, he's doing a little jig, and now he's just gonna jump scare you. All the other animatronics are called phantoms, and they don't really jump scare you to end the game. They just kind of mess with your ventilation and audio systems and all that. Oh yeah, and also the audio system basically means if you press an audio, then it leads Springtrap, which is William Afton, into another room, and it's really weird, man. So if you play throughout this entire game and you obviously know the entire history of everything now, at the end of the game, you decide to take the gasoline and just light everything on fire and burn down Five Nights at Freddy's 3. And you think, oh my gosh, we did it. This is where Five Nights at Freddy's ends and it's done. We're finished with it. You stupid. You stupid. You are dumb if you think that that's where this timeline ends. It's not ending right here. Trust me. We still have a good bit to go.
You know, they send people here. They sent people to work at Freddy Fazbear.
Five Nights at Freddy's 6, which is Five Nights at Freddy's Pizzeria Simulator, takes place in an actual pizzeria place, and basically you are buying animatronics. You are still playing as Michael Afton. Somehow you did not burn down in the building yourself, which is so odd to me. And somehow, yeah, what do you know, William survives because he always comes back. Yeah, that's his famous line. He loves to say, oh yeah, William survives everything. Apparently he survived being torn apart in a suit and 30 years later coming back to life, only to now survive a fire and then immediately come back. So yeah, you can imagine where your frustration is gonna lie. Basically, you are playing as Michael again, and now you're trying to get every single animatronic that you find, and you have to get them all into one building, which includes Lefty, Circus Baby or Scrap Baby, big old mumbo jumbo of Fun Time Freddy, which is so odd because he just looks like a big old plate of spaghetti. And then you also have, what do you know, Springtrap, or as they like to call him, Scrap Trap, or like Crap Trap, because he's terrible. He's in terrible shape. I don't know how a fire can rearrange your skeletal figure, but hey, we'll go with it. Basically, after you get all of the animatronics into one place, you are burning down the building once again. There's a thing with burning down buildings in this game as well. It's very weird. So after you burn it down, Henry Emily is actually the one that's been the phone guy and actually ends up talking to Michael.
And to you, my brave volunteer, who somehow found this job listing not intended for you. Although there was a way out planned for you, I have a feeling that's not what you want. I have a feeling that you are right where you want to be. I am remaining as well.
Throughout this entire game, Michael is the one that ends up burning down the building, and with himself and every other animatronic in it, sacrificing himself to save the kids and finally put this whole storyline to rest. It's a lot to take in, and I know this isn't really the best summarized version of FNAF, but this is the best I can do. It's to my understanding. If you want a rundown of the entire thing, 1 through 3 is a timeline, 1 through 4 is a timeline, and 1 through 6 is a timeline. This game has been retconned so many times, and that doesn't even include Security Breach Ruin, and the new Secret of the Mimic that came out, and that just rewrites all the history at once, and it just mumbo jumbles, and it's crazy. So let's get into the final game that we have now. Ultimate Custom Night takes us into the perspective of William Afton, who now has to go against 50 animatronics and try to survive against them, and we are basically in an endless hell where William now has to suffer with every single spirit that he damned throughout this entire timeline. And all of these guys have voice lines, and it's really crazy, and it's really good, and it's one of the hardest games in the thing. But if I had one word to kind of put this entire timeline and history of FNAF as a whole, it's confusing. It's a very confusing game. FNAF 1 somehow takes place way after every single other game that came after it. Somehow the starting point was FNAF 4, which also introduced Fredbear's Family Diner and Fredbear and Friends and the other animatronics, and somehow FNAF 2 had facial recognition to detect a predator, and you have all these things that just come in at once, and it's just a very, very, very odd thing. If you are a person that has never played FNAF, good on you, you've touched grass and you are a normal member of society. But if you're like me, who's played the games and have been seeing nothing but Chica ass for the last like 10 years on your feed, and Safari and private mode hasn't been helping you much, well, then you're in trouble. That is my take on this whole game, is that it's a very big confusing mess, but it has made my childhood, so I can't hate on it too much, just for the simple fact that it's made it made me. And I love FNAF games, and I love FNAF fan games, and I love doing content like this. And I like scary games, so I can't hate. But if you guys did enjoy that video, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. My name is The Mass Tank, if you didn't know already. And thank y'all so much for watching the video. I appreciate y'all. I love y'all with consent. And hope y'all enjoy the video. Thanks, y'all.
Baba Booey.